All right, well, welcome today. I'm really excited to have Dr. David Rendall with me. David is the author of, among other things, The Freak Factor. And I wanted to have Dave on today because Dave has a really unique take on self-improvement and really how do you leverage your strengths that's different than what I've heard from a lot of people. So, Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Alan. I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, we don't have any noise interference. I'm in San Diego, and my room came with complimentary earplugs, so I think that's a bad sign when they're like, "Hey, well, let's go ahead and just give these to you ahead of time."
Exactly. That was the is the train track running right by you, or?
Yeah, the train track's running right by me, and I'm not too far from the airport, and I'm right by the actual port with boats.
Oh, nice.
And there's taxi cabs. I look out my window, and there's a drive-through to a restaurant. So pretty much any sort of noise. I'm right along Pacific Coast Highway.
Perfect.
So every noise that's possible is right here.
Yeah, and if you ever want a job as like a Foley artist in a movie, that'd be a good place. Those are the guys that collect the sounds from everything. That's super. I'll have to file that away. Okay, so Dave, you called your book Freak Factor, and your website is...
It's just drendall.com, www.drendall.com, drendall.com.
Cool, and I'll have a link to that below. So when I hear the word freak, I think of either like super freak, like Rick James, so somebody who's a little bit wild, or I think about the kids in middle school who you didn't want to get associated with. So, but I think you have a different thing in mind when you talk about freak, so explain to everybody what that means to you.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. I mean, freak does, if you look it up in the dictionary, does sort of mean two things. It means positive things and it means negative things. The cover of Sports Illustrated, after the Giants, San Francisco Giants won the World Series one year, had the word freak right across the top, and it was talking about Tim Lincecum, and he's a much shorter pitcher than most people, but he throws much faster than most people. And he's much skinnier than most pitchers, but he throws faster than most pitchers. And so they called him a freak, and they meant it a very good thing. He's very unusual, he's very different, but he's also very successful.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to reframe. We call people neat freaks, we call people control freaks, and we don't ever usually mean that in a good way, just like you were talking about with your associations. We say things are freaky, and usually we mean that in a bad way. But what I want to do is most businesses and most people understand I've got to differentiate myself. I've got to be different. But then when it comes down to it, we don't want to be different because people criticize us for being different. They isolate us and reject us for being different. So I'm trying to reframe the concept of being a freak as a positive thing instead of a negative, and have people see that being more freaky instead of less is the best way to go about it. And very specifically, in my book and when I talk about this, what I mean is that being a freak it's a person who has a natural positive obsession. So what this means is we go farther with something than other people think is reasonable, than other people think is normal, and that's precisely where our success comes from. We go pro in the very area where people are telling us to stop doing it altogether, and that's the big insight. The ultimate idea of being a freak is that our biggest weaknesses are our biggest strengths. So for me, I spent my whole life getting in trouble because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. And now I get paid to stand up as a speaker and talk and run my own business. I don't have to sit down, be quiet, and do what I'm told. And not only that, but I went pro. I didn't just talk a little bit more. I didn't just move around a little bit more. I also became an endurance athlete, started running ultra marathons and triathlons. I didn't just move around a little bit more. I moved around a lot more. I wasn't just talking a little bit more. I was talking a lot more. I didn't just get a little bit better at doing what I was told, or I wasn't sort of defiant or resistant. I just stopped doing what I was told at all, started my own business, and I do whatever the hell I want every day.
Right.
So all of those things were weaknesses of mine, and they still are. That's the beauty. But I've succeeded because of my weaknesses, not in spite of them, and that's what I want to show other people.
That's cool.
Your biggest strengths are your biggest weaknesses, and becoming a freak means tapping into that and amplifying them instead of turning down the volume.
Yeah. And I loved it. In your book, you have this great exercise, and you had people go through and rank their there's a checklist of things that people would consider weaknesses, traits. And then you have a list that's strengths. And I think a lot of times, I think if you have your employee review every year, there's usually the things you got to work on, and those typically tie back to something that are just hard for you, or you wouldn't be doing bad at them anyway. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. What I want to do in this call is I want to have first of all, I want all my people to meet you because I think your work is great, but I also want to kind of use myself as a case study if you're okay, and you can make a freak out of me.
Cool.
So what I did was I went and did the exercise, and I'll have a link to Dave's book too. Here's a quick flash at he's upside down on the book, Freak Factor. Yeah, that's what he looks like. So anyway, in the book, he's got an exercise. So here's a list of weaknesses, and so I'll just read off a few of them. Chaotic, disorganized, rigid, inflexible. The third one is stubborn, obstinate. And there's a list of 52 different things that you would hate to be called in here. And so what the exercise was to go through and circle the ones that you think apply to you, and then rank the ones if you think are your most weakness. So I'll just share mine with you now in full disclosure mode. My number one was that I'm impatient and impulsive. My second one is that I'm distractible and unfocused. My third one is that unrealistic and impractical. Fourth is chaotic and disorganized. And the fifth is flattering and naive. So, Dave, I will admit that going through and doing this makes me a little uncomfortable, but you have to remember that, I'm a functioning adult. I have kids, and I have a successful business and things, but it still hurts a little bit, when you think about things, even though I kind of know how this works out in the end. So what do you think about that? What's your attitude on the whole, the focusing on weaknesses like that? Because I think it's really prevalent.
Well, it is interesting. When I do this in my seminars, I'm in big groups of people sometimes, and I'll have everybody do it at the same time. That what we do is we start with what are your top 5 strengths.
Yeah.
And then people go through a list of the 52 strengths, and they pick them out. And I have people shout out their number one. So we go around if it's a smaller group. But even if it's like 80, I have people shout out, what's your number one strength?
Let me tell you what mine is. So I did the strengths too. My number one strength was exploring and discovering. And number 2 was spontaneous and instinctive. So those feel better.
So we start there. We start there, and it does sort of reduce the danger because people have already shouted out, like, I'm a good person, in some sort of way. I'm not a complete idiot, but I'm about to tell you what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is we set it up with the kind of the conversation we just had where I tell people, your biggest weakness is probably the best thing about you. So all of a sudden people now, they know they're in a room of people who are going to reframe it differently. They're in a room of people who are going to listen differently to the idea that there's this weakness, and they're already ready to start kind of bragging about it. They're like, I'm not ashamed, and so that's the beginning of it. That's what I want people to hear is that, there's another side to this. And I think that's a great point, though. People are unaccustomed to even admitting even slightly that it might be a possibility, much less saying, this is the number one worst thing about me. This is my biggest flaw. This is my worst characteristic.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's exactly what I'm trying to move people past, because I think that's where growth starts, is when we can do that.
Well, your subtitle of your book is flaunting weakness, right? Because you said that in your own story. You're an extreme runner. You don't just go jog a couple times a week. So let's talk about maybe a couple of my strengths here. So actually... So you want to do the payoff here is that these actually match. These strengths and weaknesses are two sides of the same coin, right?
Right. So you go to the next chart. So you do top 5 strengths, top 5 weaknesses, and then the next chart you take your strengths from the strengths chart and your weaknesses from the weakness chart, and you put them together on the same chart, and you see the weakness that corresponds with each strength. You see that all of these things have a match on the positive side and the negative side, and you look to see where those matches are for you, and that reframes for you all these weaknesses, and you go, oh, that's the payoff, that's the upside.
Right. And so what I found out was my number one strength, which was exploring and discovering, matches up with distractible and unfocused.
Right. And so we like people who are exploring and discovering, and we think that's cool, and sometimes we wish we were more like that. But then when those people bother us, we call them distractible and unfocused, and we tell them they should get focused. But that's precisely what makes them exploring and discovering. So all characteristics can be described in positive or negative terms, and we like it when people use the positive, but then we seem to forget when they use the negative that it's connected to that good thing about us.
Yeah, so what would you say to people about, when they get in that mode of, you hear a lot about that, what holds you back are your weaknesses, and most self-help is about fixing weaknesses. What's your take on that? If we focus exclusively on the bad parts of our
Well, what we
traits.
actually end up doing is we actually end up destroying our strengths. I mean, when I was trying to get better at sitting still and being quiet and doing what I was told, I was missing the opportunity to tap into the best things about me, the most powerful things about me. I mean, just from an income standpoint, when I started speaking, running my own business, doing the stand up and talk and run your own business thing, finally, I've multiplied my income like 5 times in the last 7 years. There's no question, and that's just money. Then there's the happiness. I'm much happier. I'm much more fulfilled. I'm much less frustrated. I'm much less stressed. I mean, it's there's no real comparison. And so I think sometimes we think, well, I'll be well rounded and I'll be well balanced by working on my strengths. But if they're connected, what happens is that when we try to lift the weakness up, we pull the strength down. And the best example of this that I use in the book is like Walmart. You know, their biggest strength is low prices, but they're poor in service and quality and design.
Yeah.
And so if we go to Walmart with the traditional fixed weakness model, we fix that service by having more people and shorter checkout lines, and we train the people better, and we pay the people better, and we give people better benefits, and we provide better quality merchandise, and we get designers to come in and make cooler stuff for us, and then the prices start to go up and the strength starts to come down. We're fixing service, quality, and design, but people don't go to Walmart for service, quality, and design. They go to Target.
Yeah.
And they pay more at Target for that, and that's Target's weakness. And if we tried to fix that, then they would sacrifice service, quality, and design. So what I try to teach people is that everybody has side effects.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a medicine without side effects. And if you try to reduce the side effect of something, what happens is you reduce the powerful effect, the medicine effect, the healing effect of that medicine. And that's what we do to ourselves. When we try to fix the weaknesses, when we try to eliminate the side effects, what happens is we take away all the good things about us in the process of trying to take away all the bad things. And so I completely fundamentally disagree with pretty much all of the self-improvement literature that says you need to find and fix what's wrong with you. And literally flip it on its head and say, not only do you not need to fix it, but you need to flaunt it. And flaunt means to parade without shame. It means to amplify it. It means to turn up the volume. It means to say not only not apologize, like, oh, I'm sorry for this, but not only not to do that, but to say, this is fantastic. This is the best thing about me, and I'm not about to fix it. In fact, I'm trying to find ways to do more.
Yeah. So it's funny because you think about those two that I talked about. So exploring, discovering versus being distracted. So really, in my case, what that would mean is that I should find opportunities to where the exploring is valued more. So wherever that is, it may be different than where I am if I was in like 10 years ago and I was in a job and that was a problem with my boss. Maybe I need to find an outlet for that where I get good feedback on that. And so what you're saying is if I do that, I'm going to get better at that faster. I'm going to enjoy myself. Things are going to go well. And the other's never going to get better anyway, even if I work on it. But I'll be wasting my time, sort of.
That's right.
Yeah.
And damaging yourself in the process. So that's exactly right. That's one of the chapters I call alignment. So amplification is a key piece. Turn up the volume instead of turning it down.
Yeah.
But then the real key is alignment. If I'm in the wrong spot, then when I turn up the volume, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to have problems. So if I just said, well, I'm going to stay in a management role in this small nonprofit organization. I'm going to turn up the volume and all my strengths, and I'm going to stop doing what I'm told, and I'm going to start talking more, and I'm going to start moving around a lot.
Yeah.
I would have just been a failure. And in a sense, I sort of was. I succeeded in a lot of ways, but towards the end, when I started realizing this wasn't for me, I ultimately quit and then got fired before my end date because they sort of realized you're done with this, and I realized I'm sort of done with this, and it wasn't a good fit anymore. It wasn't a good match, and sort of I decided it wasn't a good match anymore.
Yeah.
So as a speaker, I can amplify because that's what people give me money for. They don't care about my sitting still, being quiet, or doing what I'm told. They want me to stand up and talk and to present my ideas and try to convince and persuade people. So part of the magic to this is instead of trying to fit yourself into a place where you don't fit anymore and become what other people want you to be, you start to ask yourself a different question, not how do I fit in, but where do I fit?
Yeah, exactly.
And where is the right fit? And what kind of situations will allow me to freak out?
Yeah, and it's I think this is interesting with the change in the way the workplace over the last generation, where it went from, you started at IBM out of college and you knew you were going to work there, so you pretty much had to fit in, because there weren't really opportunities to change.
Right.
I mean, things are totally different now, where there's so many opportunities you're expected to change. And I think, but I still think that mentality is there that if you can't fit in, there's something wrong with you. And so
Yeah.
really what you're saying is the exact opposite of that. If you can't fit in, that just means that you're in a place where you're using the sort of wrong side of the coin. And
Yeah.
but there are plenty of places out there that would value the extreme
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what you could call weakness.
The analogy I use in the book is there's a quote by Ben Franklin that says, "A strength not used is like a sundial in the shade." Right?
Yeah.
Sundials work when they're in the sun. They don't work when they're in the shade. But the problem is not the sundial. When the sundial's not working, it's because of where it is, not what it is.
Yeah.
And so the solution when the sundial's not working is not to fix it, it's to move it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we feel like I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm not functioning, and we think the solution is to repair ourselves when that's missing the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is not who we are, it's where we are.
Yeah.
So that's that key part of alignment is it's not self-improvement is not largely about fixing who we are, because you can't change it that much anyway. My grandparents have been married for 70 years, and my grandma still wishes my grandpa would talk to her more. It's not going to happen, but she's still intense. She feels like she's on the verge of a breakthrough. You know, she feels like she's just about to get him to become the man she wanted him to be. But after 70 years, you'd think she'd realize, but we don't. And so we drastically overestimate our ability and other people's ability to change. Instead of acknowledging this is probably who I am, and we don't have to just grudgingly accept it. We can be excited about it if we realize this is who I am, and this is fantastic. This is perfect.
Yeah, that's what I love about your message. Ultimately, yours is a message of hope. I mean, that if you do this, there'll be more out there. And you know what I found? I talk about these life experiments. Is that even if you just do a little bit of that thing that you're strong at, that you're a freak at, and you push it more, you'll get it's an automatic feedback for you, both internally and externally. You'll start to see traction and momentum coming. It's not
that's exactly right.
Anymore. Yeah,
and confidence.
Yeah.
So if you go to work all day and you feel like you're a failure, it's easy to think I'm a failure. But if you then start to explore with what's the right fit, what do I enjoy, what am I good at, and even if, like you said, you do it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, then you start to see, okay, I'm succeeding over here, I'm failing over here. So that doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means I have potential, I have skills, but this situation isn't allowing me to use them. So it totally changes the way we look at what's wrong. Whereas we spend more hours at work than we do anywhere else. So if I'm a failure at work, it's easy to conclude I'm a failure, I'm a bad person.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then that lack of confidence carries over to every part of our life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you don't have to. I think part of your message too is that, like, you told your story and where you are right now, but you weren't there when you started. I mean, this has been a process for you that you've been kind of tweaking up over 10 years to get to where you are.
That's
so
right.
It's not like what you're saying is that everybody should just quit their jobs and go be a freak right now. I mean, there are steps you can take along the way.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you really helped me with when I met you, is that you said, hey, I've got a strategy for helping people find their passion without quitting their job. And I was like, oh, that's one of the big questions people ask me when I get done with the Freak Factor. Oh, so you're saying I have to quit my job? And so one of the pieces of the book goes through kind of different authors, including you and other people, where it says, okay, I took them from here's the least risky, easiest, like your life experiments thing, way to start checking this out, all the way up to quit your job.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of steps in between. You can get a part-time job. You can start doing it on the side as a hobby. You can do the business part-time in the evenings while you're not doing. I mean, and I'll admit this in the book. I still have a full-time job as a college professor. It doesn't require very much time from me, but I still have that full-time job. And I started my business on the side. It's now much bigger than the side. It's the main dish now, and the college is on the side. Yeah. But I didn't want to just throw it all away and say, well, let's just give it a shot. You're exactly right. It's been a gradual process of asking a better question. The answer isn't always immediately obvious, but asking a better question, where do I fit instead of how do I fit? And what I've realized is teaching was a better fit, but I still have to grade papers, and I don't like to have to evaluate people, and they don't like it when I evaluate them poorly, and I don't like the politics, and I don't like to work for people. And so long term, teaching was a better fit, but it's not the perfect fit.
Yeah, exactly.
And then even in my business, consulting was a better fit. But then training's an even better fit than that. And then now that I'm doing keynotes, that's really the best fit. I'm best. It's an hour and a half. I get up there, I make people laugh. I do my thing. It's perfect. It's high energy. It's entertaining. It's high level because I'm not a detail person. It's high level. and then I go home. It's a simple, concrete, clearly in, clearly out, because that's one of my other strengths is that I'm an achiever. And that's one of my other weaknesses is I don't like loose ends and I don't like handling a lot of complexity. So I know I go in at this time, I speak until this time, and I go home and I get paid. That's a very nice, there's a lot of closure to that. Yeah. Whereas with consulting, I come in for a 3-week period and I talk to a lot of people and we generate reports, but then maybe they're not happy with the result and I have to have more meetings and it drags on. That's not my favorite, but it's still better than having this traditional job over here. So along the way, you start to, and once you start to really enjoy stuff, you start to see, you get greedy.
Yeah,
I think in a good way. You're like, I don't like this part of it, and I ain't doing it. So how can I create a life where I don't?
Yeah, and so you start to seek out more opportunities. And I want you to tell one story that I think is really awesome. This is you guys who follow me, you know about life experiments where you try a little taste of things. And I remember probably a year and a half ago, Dave and I were talking, and Dave said, I'm going to do a stand-up. Because one of Dave's real strengths is his sense of humor, and I hope you're getting that through here. But Dave's really phenomenal when he can get up and entertain a crowd. So Dave started, went to an open mic night. He sent me a tape of the thing, and it was really hilarious, which... at one level, I think that most people, I think the number one fear of speaking, it's one or two. I think sometimes it comes across as higher than death. So a lot of people, you might think Dave's a freak just because he even likes the fact to get out there, but he loves speaking to people. So that's a great example. Right. But kind of as a funny little thought, one of the things I love in the routine that he did was he told a little story about a time when he had put on a little bit of weight. And I just thought that was really funny because it's an example of a weakness that a lot of us have in midlife. But I don't like, if I have put on a few pounds, I really don't want people to notice. I certainly don't want to talk about it. But you went even further. So do you want to tell a story about what happened to your daughters and how that kind of, how you went crazy flaunted that aspect of what happened?
Yeah, and how it works. Yeah, there's a book called Secrets of Consulting by a guy named Gerald Weinberg, and he says if you can't fix it, feature it.
Okay.
Right? If you can't fix it, feature it.
Right.
So Hardee's did this with the thick burger. Hey, fast food isn't good for you. We just made it worse.
Yeah.
The Mini Cooper did it, basically bragging about how small their car was.
Yeah.
So I had put on a few pounds, but I was in denial. I was in denial, and I was sitting with my daughter. And when I gain weight, it's only right in my stomach. I'm tall and skinny, and I don't gain weight anywhere in my body except in my belly. So I was sitting with my daughter one morning. She was 2 years old, and we were watching television. And I get more into the cartoons sometimes than they do. So I'm looking up at the TV, and she's talking to me, but I'm distracted because I want to know if Dora is going to make it to the castle, and so I'm telling her to be quiet. And she says, "Daddy, is your tummy full?" And I didn't know what she was talking about. It was early in the morning. We hadn't had breakfast. So I said, "No, honey, Daddy's tummy isn't full. I haven't even had breakfast." And then I looked over at her because she asked me again, and I realized she wasn't really looking at my face. She was looking at my stomach, and she was poking it. And she poked me in my stomach, and she said, "You got a baby in there?" and when she did that, I obviously realized I'd put on too much weight. But then I started thinking about it, and I started thinking how I've got these long, skinny legs and these long, skinny arms and this big belly, and I realized my kids look the same way when they're little. They run around the house in a diaper, and 2-year-olds don't have any stomach muscles, so they got this big stomach sticking out, and they got these skinny arms and these skinny legs, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm not a man, I'm a giant 2-year-old. I look just like a giant 2-year-old, which put a diaper on me at the beach, and I'm ready to go. But then I thought I'd take advantage of it, right? So they have that expectant mothers parking for pregnant women at a lot of grocery stores and stuff like that. And I decided I was just going to pull up and use the expectant mothers parking because, hey, nobody wants to be wrong about that, right? Nobody wants to see you parking there and think, hey, he shouldn't be doing that, and get over you just to discover you are a giant, ugly, tall, pregnant woman, right? Nobody wants to be wrong about that. So I decided to take advantage of it. And I guess I should have known that something was wrong with me when I started seeing women wearing the maternity pants, right? Because they're wearing the maternity pants with a stretchy patch up around the waist, so their belly can push out. And I was thinking, man, those are sweet. I got to get some of those. And I do think that's a real marketing opportunity. There's no extra charge from Allan and I for sharing these secrets of marketing. This is a real marketing opportunity because maternity pants, let's be honest, this is only a 6 to 9 month window for most women, right?
Yeah.
and they're only going to have 2 or 3 children, most people. So this is really not a big thing. But for men, this is a 20, 30-year opportunity. You could just be selling pair after pair after pair to the same man for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
So yeah, while I'm doing that, I'm, and we can't do it as well here, but while I'm doing that on stage, I'm turning to the side and people are laughing because from the front they can't really tell that I've got this 6-month pregnancy going. And I turn to the side so all parts of the audience kind of gradually can see what we're talking about. And the interesting thing about that is, just like you said, we're afraid to admit our weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Much less to brag about them. And what happens is when I do, and you could watch the clip online, or maybe you were laughing when you heard it here, people laugh. They laugh really hard. And they're not making fun of you. They're laughing at the fact that you're willing to make fun of yourself.
Exactly.
And they're more connected with you, not less. And this is an important point that I discovered along the way. People trust you more when you'll admit your weaknesses than when you pretend you don't have any. And when you're willing to, it shows such a high level of self-confidence, actually, instead of the other way around. When you're willing to say, yep, I got a big belly and I look like a pregnant woman, people feel like, holy cow, he's got to have a tremendous amount of confidence to be able to do that. And so instead of seeing you as lower, they see you as higher. Instead of seeing you as insecure, they see you as incredibly secure. Instead of seeing you as a person who needs to get some self-control and lose some weight, they're like, holy cow, what kind of person is able to just admit that in front of everybody and not have any shame? And that's what flaunt means, parade without shame.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, exactly.
It works, and people like it. And then you, in a sense, in fact, I did it once after I'd lost some weight, and I didn't really have the physical, evidence to show it off, and it went nowhere. People were like, I don't get it. It's not funny.
Yeah, exactly.
So I put the weight back on purposefully. So the
right, exactly. Well, I
deliberately started eating more donuts.
You'd be a great woman, Dave, because you totally carry it right out front. The ladies don't like to have too much in the back. So
I've got a muffin top. That's what mine is. If I was a lady, it would be a muffin top.
Right.
Muffin top. The big, big muffin.
Yeah. I think the lesson there is, not that probably most people want to get up and be funny. 'Cause I am not funny, and that's not how I react to people. But I also give talks, and people like my talks, but I have a different style of that. And mine's more about inspiring people and connecting with people. And I tell stories that may be humorous, but if I tried to tell a joke, it would go nowhere. Yeah. And so it's about leveraging what you got and going with it and not being afraid to push it so far. And I think Dave has done this enough to where he knows that he really believes it and gets it. And I think that story just shows at what level what you can get if you're willing to just push it beyond where you are.
Yeah, I tell people to go pro. I had students, I asked them about their weaknesses, and one lady said, I'm too organized. My family gets on me because I want to put everything away and I want everything to be in its place. And we call people like that, we call them anal retentive, we call them neat freaks, we call them control freaks, we say they have OCD. And I asked her, I said, well, have you ever been to the National Association of Professional Organizers? And she said, no, I haven't. And I said, if you went to the National Association of Professional Organizers, if you went to their conference, you'd probably discover you're an amateur. You discover that you're not too organized. You're probably not organized enough to get paid for it.
Yeah.
The problem is not for most of us that we have too much of something. It's that we haven't gone far enough to go pro. We haven't gone far enough to get paid. I didn't get paid for being obnoxious in a meeting. I didn't get paid for talking out in class. I got paid for going far enough to where I said, hey, you can hire me to do this.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times we've stopped with that weakness, that differentiation, that freakness too early, and we haven't pushed it far enough to the point we can get paid. So it's about going pro. It's about taking it to the next level. It's about, then that's what I've discovered even with my humor. I get a little bit ridiculous and people laugh, and I'm like, well, if that's funny, let's get a little more ridiculous, and then they laugh, and then if that's funny. And so even that story, it used to just be, and then she said, do you have a baby in there? And people would laugh, and that's all I had.
Yeah.
But when I started the stand-up comedy, I'm like, that's a good start. What else would be funny about that?
Yeah.
And I ramped it up. So, and I even use that in a very, very serious talk I do about leadership and about how great leaders were killed, and that one of the qualities that marks great leaders is their humility. And I say sometimes even if you're not humble, people will humiliate you, and I'll tell that story. And so I use it as a way to break the tension in a very heavy talk about some very deep issues. And that's one of the reasons I get paid a lot to speak, is because I can tackle some really tough issues without making it painful for the people in the audience, and I can entertain them and inspire them at the same time. But that's what I always got in trouble for in school, was being the class clown and for goofing around and for being silly and being ridiculous. And now I can be incredibly ridiculous in front of 500 very, very professional people, and they love it, and I love it, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and Dave, what I'm thinking about as you're saying that is like I think we all have a choice at any given moment. Really, it's like ultimately you can say I'm gonna work on fixing my weaknesses or hiding them, even maybe not fix them, but just trying to not.
Oh, sure, pretending I don't have them, or trying
so
to make sure nobody sees them.
Or you could work on taking those weaknesses further and turning them into the really powerful strengths. And I think, but that's really just a starting point. I mean, I think what you're talking about is. Your strengths aren't going to get better just because you have them. And it's not a magic bullet that you're going to do them. But it's kind of like a choice between, okay, always struggling. Like one of mine is I am just not good with details, but I'm awesome at big picture. And I get paid a lot of money to help companies figure out the big picture and help them avoid problems.
And then they handle the details.
And they know exactly. And then I come and tell them what needs to be done, and they can do that great. But, I have to manage details in my life. I have to show up places. I have to do things. So I've had to build all these systems, basically, to prop up my weakness. But I never get better at those. Right. But when I work on the big picture, my skills keep growing up. Just like with your humor, you've gotten better over time by practicing it. And it's not only do you get better faster, but it's actually you're having fun doing it. So it's like there's really no downside to taking that path versus the weakness, and the weakness is just a path of frustration, and it's not fun,
Well, and that's the thing. You need a certain amount of energy and attention to be able to work on something, and with a weakness, it's demoralizing and it's frustrating, and you don't enjoy it, so you're never going to put in the time and energy that it takes. Whereas with your strength, it's this reinforcing loop of I put in a little bit of effort and I get a big payoff. So that's one of the messages I want people to hear before we wrap up today, is that one of the things I talk about in the book is the rewards for being the best are outrageous.
Yeah.
And the only way to be the best at something is to naturally enjoy it and to naturally be good at it, so that when you do practice, because there is self-development, there is improvement, there is growth, it's just where you choose to do that.
Yeah.
And so if you choose to do it in the area where you already have a natural advantage, then that's where you're going to find the biggest payoff, and that's where you're going to see the greatest acceleration, that's where you're going to see the greatest momentum, and that's where you're going to have the greatest success. So it's not about, do I just go with what I've got or try to get something new? That's not the point. It's if I'm going to choose to invest in self-development, do I fix the weaknesses or build on the strengths? And what I try to show people is that's really a silly question. Your weaknesses and your strengths are the same thing, so let's try to build up the upside and not worry about the downside. And the downside will actually get worse in the process. You'll get less detail oriented, you'll get less organized as you move in whatever that other direction is, and being more creative or being more big picture. But being comfortable with that and recognizing, yep, that's just one of my side effects, and people pay me for the healing effect. People pay me for the medicine effect. They don't pay me for the side effect, and they're willing to deal with those side effects. Then that's where we find real success.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So, Dave, so you've got a program right now, and I'm going to have a link for everybody below if they want to find out more information. If you click the link, Dave's got a great video that's got a lot of value and goes into some more detail about this, even if you don't want to decide to buy the program or not. But I highly recommend it. But why don't you just tell people just a little bit about kind of why you put it together and what's in it, if they're interested.
Yeah, well, one of the things is a lot of people see this talk when I do it all over the world. I've recently been asked to do it in the capital city of every state in Australia, and I've had a lot of success with it, but there's a lot of people who will never end up at one of those programs or never meet me. And so I wanted to put something together online that was more easily accessible and that I could share through friends like you. And so it's called the Freak Factor System, and what it is it's the Freak Factor video, so you get to see the entire seminar from start to finish, and you could work through the process of what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, and really do that assessment, and then get the whole system all the way from awareness of what those strengths and weaknesses are, all the way through amplification and alignment and those other pieces, and really see the framework and apply it to yourself. But then it also comes with a digital version of the book, so you've got even more of that concrete information about how do I apply this to my own life. And that also comes with the audio download, where you could listen to it in the car, listen to it on your iPod, share it with other people. And then I included in there as free bonuses my time management, my stress management stuff, because again, I think oftentimes if we're trying to manage our time so that we can fix more of our weaknesses, we're ending up failing, not because we don't have the right time management tools, but because on a big picture level, we're choosing the wrong priorities. From a stress management level, we're stressed because we're in the wrong spot, not because we need to fix something about us. So all of those things work together to show you kind of how to revamp your life in a way that you'll feel happier and you'll have better results and get more of what you want, whether that's money or more flexibility or more time or more happiness. I actually think they all go together. I mean, the more money I have, the more flexibility I have, the more happiness I have, the more money I can make because I'm not needy and I'm not struggling, and so people sense that I don't have to have whatever they have, and I'm not trying to take things away from them. I'm doing okay, but if they'd like to hire me to speak, I'd love to do it. But I'm not going to starve if they don't hire me, so I don't have to, constantly knock my price down or whatever. So I think all those things work together, and I tried to put together a package of resources. So we're talking about 3 hours of video, almost 3 hours of audio. There's workbooks with assessments that go with each of the stress management and time management ones where you can go through, do assessments. You can follow along with the video. You can fill in some blanks, and you can really have something to take away instead of, okay, I saw that, but I don't remember all the pieces. So they each come with about a 20-page electronic workbook that you can fill in right on your computer and save. So
cool. Excellent. So I'll have a link to that below on the page here that you can sign up for. And so any parting thoughts, Dave? We only had, I think I heard a boat and a train. I haven't heard an airplane yet. So
there was a garbage truck. I was keeping track. Right at the beginning, there was train and then garbage truck right outside. Right. So we covered those. But yeah, it hasn't been a lot of airplane, and it is. We're not next door to the airport.
And no earthquakes, so that's good.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is some people might have a book based on books they've read or research they've done or whatever. I think the reason I'm so passionate about that, and I think that's even come through. I mean, here we are. It's almost 11 o'clock in the morning where you are, but I got up at 6:30 after traveling from the East Coast the night before, and I'm not sitting here sort of like, oh, Allan, okay, it's the morning. I've got a case of the Mondays,
Yeah, right.
You can probably sense, even on a Skype call, that I'm jacked up about this. I'm waving my arms around, and I'm shouting, and the fact that I even scheduled it with you, the fact that I wasn't like, no, Allan, I'm not getting up early in the morning. That's bull crap. Let's. I don't want to talk about this, or just seeing it as an activity. I don't want to do anything except talk about this, and that's because it's not research, it's not books, although it was those things afterwards. It's holy crap, this really changed my life. This really helped me. I've seen it work, and then I've met other people and I've seen it work in their lives. I mean, one of the stories in the book is a girl named Mary who was in Minnesota, and she called me up and she's like, my boss gave me your ebook, and she's like, I was overweight, I was a smoker, I was unhappy, I was an administrative assistant, I was just miserable. And you'll see a picture of her in the book. She's just this classic. She was probably 30-40% body fat just from head to toe, and she was miserable and unhappy. And now you see pictures of her, and she's like 10% body fat. She's ripped from head to toe. She's way more muscular and strong than any man I know. She's super fit. And what happened was she read just the short Freak Factor ebook and was so inspired by it, she quit her job, started working as a personal trainer, quit smoking, started eating incredibly healthy, started training nonstop, and then training other people as part of a living, started a blog on how to be more fit, and just went 120%, 180% as fast as she could go in the opposite direction of everything about her former life. I'm not good at sitting in one spot. I'm not good at answering the phone calls. I'm not good at doing what these people want me to do, and I'm miserable. Her smoking wasn't a problem of addiction. It was a problem of, I'm unhappy, so I want something to make me feel good. My job makes me miserable, so I eat a lot to make me feel good. Now she feels good from doing those things she always wanted to do, but she felt like, oh, I need to be a better person over here before I can do that. So the transformation's just been absolutely amazing. So that's where I'm excited about it, and what makes what I'm talking about different, I think, is because the only reason I put together the book wasn't because I want to sell a book. It was because after the seminar, which I only did because people said, how does that work? Then people said, well, yeah, but how does it apply to me, and what do I do, and what are the steps? And so I put together the book as a resource. So for me, it's not me, it's telling my story. And I think I want so badly. I was unhappy, I was unfulfilled, but I was trying to do the right things. I was going to school, and I was working hard, and I was reading books, but they were all telling me the wrong thing. So I really think this is a different way to look at things, and I think it's a way that almost in a moment can have a drastic difference on how you see and feel, even just how you feel. I mean, people can just read this, and even if they don't fix anything right away or change their direction, they can just go, oh, okay, so nothing's wrong with me. So just the chart. These things they said were bad with me are actually good about me. I never thought of it that way. Awesome. And just right there, you can have a completely different sense of who you are and feel better, even if you don't take any action on it. Just even the step of, screw you, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine, and I'm going to figure out how to find the right fit and all those other things later. But right now, I immediately feel better. I mean, that's it right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen that too. And everybody who's watching, I mean, Dave definitely lives this way. Even now, I mean, you're always talking about how to like continually push yourself in those directions, and you're seeing the payoff. I mean, I think just from the outset, Dave's more and more hitting his stride with really aligning with just the stuff that he loves to do. I mean, you're getting to the point where you can pick and choose where you spend your time, and that's the ultimate payoff. And it's not like you're not going to keep growing. I mean, the cool thing about working on your strengths is you never get there. With the weaknesses, maybe you get them to where it's not a problem anymore, but with the strengths, the fun part is you realize as you get better and better, you sort of want to keep getting better and better, and the opportunities keep coming. And you don't hear about that very much either. I mean, unless you're a pro athlete or something. But it's a blood joy of doing that.
And that's a great example. You know, what we don't realize, and when I said the rewards for being the best are outrageous, is even when you're really, really good, the rewards really peak at the edge of greatness. And the only way to get great, the biggest mistake a lot of people make is, I'm already really good at this, so why not go work on something else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because going from a 9.6 out of 10 at something to being a 9.7 out of 10 at something can have a massive impact, on your influence, and on your pay.
Yeah.
I mean, a person who's a really, really good speaker probably gets about $10,000 to $15,000 per speech. But a guy who's absolutely flawless, fantastic, perfect, amazing, top of his game can make $50,000 to $100,000. It's not just a slight difference. But somebody who's a sucky speaker, who doesn't like it, who isn't good at it, who doesn't enjoy it, and it's one of their weaknesses, if they go from being a 5 or a 4, they're below average, to being a 6, being slightly above average, they're going to get paid in plaques and mugs and pens and thank you notes and gift cards to Barnes & Noble. Okay?
Yeah.
So they could move 2 points from 4 to 6 and get absolutely no payoff at all. And somebody else can move from a 9.5 to a 9.75 and see their income quadruple. Yeah. And that's the place it happens. It happens at the end. It happens at the edge of being the best, of being the greatest at something, at being at a high level at something. And the only way we can do that is if we love it, and we were already good at it to start off. We start off with the things where we're already an 8 without even trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a good speaker the first time I ever gave a talk, even though I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was good enough to get referrals that gave me the chance to practice to get better, but I was already good. I was already funny. I've gotten funnier, but I was already funny. I was making kids laugh when I was in kindergarten. I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Now I just do it in front of the group instead of inside of the group.
Right.
But I started with the things where I was already good.
I was just saying, but it's also, I think some people might think, oh, geez, it's going to be so much work to do that. But I mean, you could probably say it's fun. It's fun finding out how to do the next thing, right?
Well, then that's the thing too. When you're getting paid more, not only getting paid more, but you're getting paid more for less.
Yeah.
So I got paid more and more to do training, but then I started doing keynotes, and now you're getting paid more to do a 1-hour keynote than you'd even get paid to do a full day of training. And so now the amount of time, so then it allows you to be even more choosy about how you spend your time, because you're like, I can make that much in such a short period of time. Then what else can I do with my time, and how can I get more of those opportunities? So yeah, it isn't hard because work stops being work when it's something you would do anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, I would be.
And you're always thinking about, how do I make that story a little funnier, or how do I push that a little bit further, or how do I engage the people?
And I have time to.
Do that. Yeah,
I have time to, because I'm not spending 80 hours a week just trying to get by.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's really good stuff, y'all. So I definitely encourage you to at least click on the link, find out what's going on, and if you're interested, it's lots of value for what Dave's doing. He's not trying to make a ton of money on this, so. But
Yeah, I
Dave,
think if you bought all those things separately, because they're all out there on Amazon, all the things that I'm selling, I think
Yeah.
it's like $500 worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's for $97 or something like that, and you get instant access to it digitally, and you've got it. You can save it on your computer. You got it forever. So yeah, it's not a question of is he trying to rip me off? You can go right now on Amazon and buy each of those things individually, and I sell them every day. So it's not that. But I wanted to put them together in a package where that's why we call it the Freak Factor system, where it's kind of takes people from A to Z, and it gives them all the tools right there. Because someone might buy one of the videos but not buy the other one, and I wanted people to have the whole package.
Yeah, cool. Well, Dave, thanks for meeting with me today. Enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you,
sunny
Allan.
day. The weather's better there than here today.
Oh yeah, it's looking like it's sunny, blue skies, and it'll probably be in the 70s today. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Great. Okay, Dave, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.